The village of Oakhaven lay nestled in the crook of the silent mountains, a cluster of moss-roofed cottages that seemed to breathe in unison with the ancient trees surrounding them. As twilight deepened, painting the sky in hues of lavender and rose, a soft, silvery glow began to emanate from the windows, where lamina moths, captured in jars of spun glass, cast their gentle light. The air, cool and crisp, carried the scent of pine needles and hearth smoke, and beneath it all, a sound that was less a sound and more a feeling, the Whisperwind. Elara, a girl with eyes the color of twilight pools and hair like spun moonlight, sat by her window, watching the last embers of sunset fade. She wasn't just watching, she was listening. Everyone in Oakhaven knew the Whisperwind, a constant gentle breath that flowed through the valley, rustling leaves, humming through the eaves, and carrying the faint sweet scent of distant meadows. But for Elara, the Whisperwind was a tapestry of voices, a symphony of stories woven into the very fabric of the air. She heard the ancient sighs of the mountain peaks, the sleepy murmur of the river as it flowed over smooth stones, the secret rustle of the forest floor as night creatures stirred. Tonight, however, there was a new note in the Whisperwind's song. A faint tremor, a hesitant sigh that wasn't quite right. It was like a single thread pulled taut in a perfectly woven cloth, creating a subtle discord only she seemed to perceive. Elara was different, even for Oakhaven, where a certain quiet communion with nature was commonplace. From the time she was a tiny sprout, barely taller than a mushroom cap, she had possessed an uncanny sensitivity to the world around her. She could feel the joy of a blossom unfurling, the quiet sadness of a cloud before rain, the contented thrum of the earth beneath her bare feet. But it was the Whisperwind that spoke to her most clearly, a language of light and shadow, of memory and dreams. Most nights, the Whisperwind would hum lullabies of distant shores, stories of sky whales swimming through star-dusted nebulae, or the gentle laughter of forgotten forest sprites. It would bring dreams of sweet berries and sun-dappled glades, wrapping the village in a comforting blanket of peace. Tonight, though, the stories were fragmented, the lullabies broken, like a melody played on a harp with a missing string. A soft melancholy settled over her, a premonition light as a feather, yet persistent. She traced a pattern on the cool glass of her window pane, her brow furrowed in thought. Her little cottage, like all in Oakhaven, was built from the very wood of the Whisperwood forest that bordered the village, its timbers imbued with a faint, warm glow. The walls were hung with dried herbs and woven tapestries depicting the cycles of the moon and the ancient trees. A small carved wooden owl, a gift from her Nana elms, perched on her bookshelf, its glass eyes seeming to watch her with knowing wisdom. A soft knock sounded at her door. "Elara, my little star listener, are you ready for supper?" It was her Nana elms, her voice like warm honey and spiced tea. Elara turned, a small smile gracing her lips. Nana Elms was a woman woven from old tales and starlight, her silver hair braided with wildflowers even in winter, her hands gnarled like ancient roots but gentle as a butterfly's wing. She was the village elder, the keeper of stories, and Elara's closest confidante. "Coming, Nana," Elara replied, sliding off her window seat. She smoothed the folds of her simple homespun dress, her thoughts still lingering on the Whisperwind's unsettling song. The kitchen was filled with the comforting aroma of mushroom stew and fresh-baked bread. The hearth-fire crackled merrily, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. Nana Elms sat at the small round table, stirring her stew with a wooden spoon, her eyes, the same twilight color as Elara's, twinkling with warmth. "You were listening again, weren't you?" Nana Elms said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. She knew Elara better than anyone. Elara nodded, taking her seat. "The Whisperwind is different tonight, Nana. It feels troubled, like a dream that's lost its way." Nana Elms paused, her spoon hovering over the stew. A shadow, fleeting as a passing cloud, crossed her ancient face. "Ah, so you felt it too, my little one. I thought perhaps it was just old age playing tricks on my ears, but your senses are sharper than any hawk's." She sighed softly, a sound that seemed to echo the faint tremor Elara had heard in the air. "Yes, the Whisperwind has been uneasy for some time now. A whisper here, a sigh there. But tonight, it feels more fractured." Elara looked up, her spoon forgotten. "What does it mean, Nana? What could trouble the Whisperwind?" Nana Elms reached across the table and gently squeezed Elara's hand. The Whisperwind, Elara, is more than just air currents. It is the breath of Eridor itself, the very spirit of our world. It carries the memories of the earth, the dreams of its creatures, the echoes of every song ever sung and every story ever told. It is the loom upon which the tapestry of our reality is woven. She leaned back, her gaze distant, as if seeing through the cottage walls and into the vastness beyond. Long, long ago, when the world was young and magic flowed like rivers, the Whisperwind was a mighty current, vibrant and strong. It connected every living thing, every stone, every star. It was the messenger of the ancients, the guide of the lost, the healer of weary souls. But over the ages, Nana continued, her voice growing softer, as the world changed. As some forgot the old ways and focused on the mundane, the Whisperwind began to wane. Not disappear, mind you, but grow quieter, more subtle. Only those with open hearts and listening souls could truly hear its song. And even then it required quiet spirit, a gentle touch. Elara listened intently, her imagination painting vivid pictures of a world where the Whisperwind roared with vibrant life. But why is it troubled now, Nana? Has someone forgotten it entirely? Nana Elms shook her head slowly. It's not forgetting, my dear. Not exactly. There are whispers, faint as the first dewdrop on a spider's silk, of a shadow, a subtle disquiet creeping into the heart of the Whisperwood, where the oldest currents of the Whisperwind are said to gather and weave their most potent magic. The Whisperwood. Elara knew the forest well. It was a place of ancient, towering trees with bark like wrinkled wisdom, their branches intertwined to form a perpetual twilight beneath their canopy. Lumina moss carpeted the forest floor, casting a soft, ethereal glow, and gentle, shy creatures with eyes like polished stones rustled through the undergrowth. Most of the village revered the Whisperwood, venturing only into its fringes for foraging or peaceful contemplation. Deeper within lay the heart of the forest, a place whispered about in hushed tones, where the oldest trees stood, sentinel around the legendary Heartstone, the very nexus of the Whisperwind's power. The Heartstone? Elara breathed, recalling the legends. Is that where the trouble lies? Perhaps, Nana Elms said, her gaze returning to Elara, a serious light in their depths. The Heartstone is said to hum with the purest essence of the Whisperwind. If its song falters, if its light dims, then the balance of the whole valley, perhaps even beyond, could be disturbed. Dreams could tangle, memories could blur, and the very magic that sustains our quiet way of life could begin to fade. A chill, not from the evening air, touched Elara. The thought of the vibrant, colorful tapestry of life unraveling, of the gentle magic that infused every leaf and stone losing its luster, was deeply unsettling. Her own connection to the Whisperwind was so profound that she felt its pain as a dull ache in her own heart. What can be done, Nana? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nana Elms reached for a small leather-bound book from the shelf beside her, its pages brittle with age. The legends speak of a guardian, a protector, chosen by the Whisperwind itself to mend its threads when they fray. But no one has seen such a guardian in centuries. The Whisperwind's song has been too faint for such a clear message to be heard. She opened the book to a page illustrated with swirling patterns of air and light, and a faint, ethereal figure. They say the guardian would know the Whisperwind's true name, its deepest secrets, and possess a heart pure enough to resonate with its essence. Elara looked at the drawing, her mind buzzing. She had always felt a unique bond with the Whisperwind, a sense of understanding that went beyond mere hearing. She often found herself humming its forgotten melodies, knowing instinctively which path the wind would take through the trees, feeling the shift in its mood. Could it be that? No, she was just Elara, a simple girl from Oakhaven. Yet, the thought persisted, a tiny spark igniting in her soul. She felt the Whisperwind's troubled hum deep within her, a call for help that seemed to resonate specifically with her hair. How would one find this guardian, Nana? Elara asked, her voice steady despite the tremor of excitement and apprehension in her chest. Nana Elms closed the book with a soft thud. The legends are vague, my dear. They say the Whisperwind would guide them, that signs would appear, subtle as a breath, clear as a star. It would be a journey not of strength, but of quiet purpose, of listening, and of an unwavering heart. She looked at Elara, her wise eyes seeing far more than Elara realized. But this is not a task for a young girl, Elara. The Whisperwood, though beautiful, holds ancient secrets, and sometimes ancient dangers. It is not a place to wander without clear intent and deep respect. Elara knew her Nana was right. The deeper parts of the Whisperwood were not for casual exploration. But the feeling, the deep-seated certainty that Esheshe was meant to listen, to understand, to somehow help, was growing stronger with every passing moment. The Whisperwind was calling to Ashira. She finished her stew in silence, the warmth of the food comforting, but her mind was already soaring through the ancient trees, listening for the fractured melody. After supper, as Nana Elms tidied the kitchen, humming a low, wordless tune that was itself like a soft breeze, Elara slipped back to her window. The luminomoths in their jars cast a soft, pulsing light, and outside, the true stars began to prickle the inky canvas of the sky. The Whisperwind still sighed, a little more mournfully now, a little more disjointedly. Elara closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her, trying to decipher its fractured message. She felt a subtle pull, a gentle tugging towards the heart of the forest, a path she had never dared to tread alone. "The Heartstone," she whispered to herself. "The Whisperwind needs help, and it's calling me." A tiny luminescent moth, drawn by the light from her window, fluttered in and landed softly on her finger. Its delicate wings pulsed with a faint, warm glow, and as Elara looked at it, she felt a surge of quiet determination. This was not a grand quest of dragons and swords, but a journey of listening, of understanding, of connecting with the very soul of her world. A gentle quest, perhaps, but one that felt immensely important. She knew she couldn't simply charge into the ancient forest. She needed to prepare, to understand more, to listen with every fiber of her being. But the path, she realized, was becoming clear. The Whisperwind was speaking, and Elara, its truest listener, was ready to heed its call. Tomorrow, she would begin. Tomorrow she would seek out the first faint sign, the first guiding whisper, that would lead her deeper into the mysteries of the Whisperwood and the troubled heart of the Whisperwind itself. Tomorrow, she would begin. Tomorrow, she would seek out the first faint sign, the first guiding whisper, that would lead her deeper into the mysteries of the Whisperwood and the troubled heart of the Whisperwind itself. Elara rose with the first blush of dawn, the air still cool and moist against her skin. The familiar song of the morning birds, usually a cheerful symphony, was now tinged with a subtle, sorrowful undertone that only she could discern. It was the Whisperwind, its vast, invisible presence weaving through every rustle of leaf and ripple of stream, breathing out its quiet grief. Today she would answer its call. Her preparations were simple, born of long familiarity with the wilderness that bordered her home. A small sturdy pack held a waterskin, a pouch of dried berries and nuts, a thin coil of rope and a flint and steel. Her grandmother's knife, its hilt worn smooth by generations of hands, was tucked securely into her belt. Over her practical tunic and trousers, she donned a cloak of deep forest green, woven not just for warmth, but with subtle, almost invisible protection runes that hummed faintly against her skin. A gift from her mentor, now long departed. As a final touch, she carefully adjusted the small, smooth riverstone, worn to a comforting coolness, that always rested in her pocket, a grounding reminder of her connection to the earth. She paused at her cottage door, taking a long, deep breath. The scent of wood smoke and wild herbs clung to the air, a comforting anchor to the life she knew. For a moment, a tremor of apprehension, cold and sharp, touched her heart. The Whisperwood was ancient, vast, and held secrets far deeper than any she had yet encountered. But then, the wind sighed through the eaves, a gentle caress that felt like an encouraging touch, and her resolve solidified. This was not a journey of fear, but of purpose. The edge of the Whisperwood was not a harsh line, but a gradual deepening. The familiar sun-dappled fields gave way to scattered copses, then thicker groves, until the light grew dim and emerald, filtered through a canopy of leaves that whispered secrets, even on the stillest air. The scent shifted too, from fresh grass to damp earth, rich loam, and the spicy tang of ancient bark. The air itself seemed to grow heavier, alive with unseen energies, prickling against her skin like distant static. As Elara stepped beneath the first towering sylvan spire, she felt the change profoundly. The Whisperwind, which had been a pervasive hum in her village, here became a distinct, palpable entity. It didn't just blow, it existed, a vast, conscious breath that permeated every fiber of the forest. Its whispers were no longer distant echoes but immediate, intimate presences, brushing against her awareness like soft, invisible fingers. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting her other senses take over. The rustle of leaves overhead wasn't random. It was a conversation, sometimes hushed, sometimes urgent. The creak of a branch wasn't just wood settling. It was a sigh, deep and weary. The faint chime that danced on the air wasn't a bell, but the delicate song of the moss bells, blooming on ancient stones, their tiny petals vibrating with the forest's energy. The Whisperwind was guiding her, not with words, but with an intricate dance of feeling and subtle suggestion. A branch, thicker than its neighbors, seemed to lean invitingly to the north. A patch of luminescent glimmer moss, usually scattered, formed a shimmering trail deeper into the woods. She followed, her steps light, her senses extended, her tuning fork resonating with the forest's own song. The whisperwood unfolded around her in breathtaking beauty. Trees reached impossible heights, their bark patterned with swirling runes that pulsed with faint internal light. Flowers the color of twilight bloomed in the undergrowth, their petals seeming to absorb and release the dappled light. Tiny lumen sprites, like living embers, darted through the air, leaving trails of stardust in their wake. Everything here hummed with a vibrant, intricate magic. But then the subtle dissonance began to make itself known. The Whisperwind's song, though still beautiful, had fractured notes. Elara noticed it first in the spring petal flowers. Usually their petals glowed with an inner fire, a vibrant pulse of life. Here, a cluster she found clinging to a mossy bank was dull, their glow muted to a faint, sickly glimmer. They seemed to droop, their life force diminished. The whisperwind around them felt choked, the whispers tangled and distorted, like voices trying to speak through a thick fog. She knelt, her fingers gently brushing a wilting spring petal. A wave of profound sadness washed over her, an echo of the flower's own suffering, but magnified by the vast grieving presence of the whisperwind. This wasn't just a withered plant, it was a symptom, a small wound in the forest's grand body. As she rose, her gaze swept over the surrounding trees. Here, the sylvan spires, usually vibrant with their internal hum, were quieter, their bark runes faded. The glimmer moss glowed weakly, and the air, though still magical, carried a faint, unsettling silence, a void where the usual effervescent hum of life should have been. Suddenly, a flicker of light caught her eye. It was a lumen sprite, but unlike the others, it wasn't darting playfully. It hovered near a particularly listless whispervine, its small ethereal body pulsing erratically, its light dimming and brightening in distress. It seemed to be trying to draw her attention, its tiny, high-pitched chimes a desperate plea that resonated directly with the whisperwind's sorrow. Elara extended a hand, palm open, and hummed a soft ancient melody, a soothing balm she had learned from the wind itself. The lumen sprite, hesitant at first, drifted closer, circling her hand before settling on her outstretched finger. It was smaller than she expected, fragile, and its erratic light seemed to calm slightly under her touch. It pressed its tiny, glowing form against her skin, and through their contact, Elara felt a surge of clearer emotion, a pinpoint of fear, a wave of profound loss, and a desperate urgency. The lumen sprite then darted away, flitting a short distance, then pausing, looking back at her with its bright, intelligent eyes. It was urging her to follow. This was a direct invitation, a clear path offered by the forest itself. Elara nodded, a silent promise to the small creature, and began to follow its flickering guide deeper into the troubled heart of the whisperwood. The further they went, the more pronounced the signs of distress became. They passed through groves where ancient trees stood like silent sentinels, their leaves drooping, their branches bare of the usual vibrant mosses. Patches of earth lay strangely barren, devoid of the usual rich undergrowth, as if the life had been leached from them. The air grew cooler, heavier, and the whisperwind's song became a fragmented lament, broken by long, unsettling silences. The lumen sprite led her along a winding, forgotten path, through a thicket of thorn bushes whose thorns seemed sharper, their shadows deeper than any she had encountered before. Finally, after what felt like hours of walking through the increasingly melancholic landscape, the sound of rushing water, distinct and powerful, reached her ears. But it wasn't the joyful roar of a mountain stream. This sound was different, a cacophony of whispers, hisses, and groans. They emerged into a clearing, and Elara gasped. Before her stood the Whispering Falls, a landmark she had only heard spoken of in hushed tones. It was not a waterfall of water, but of shimmering, ethereal mist cascading down from a towering cliff face. Usually the mist was a vibrant, iridescent display, swirling with colors and carrying the clear, melodic voices of the Whisperwind. But now, it was turbulent, often gray and opaque, its iridescent hues muted. The whispers it carried were chaotic, overlapping, sometimes shrieking in distress, sometimes falling into an unnerving silence that felt heavier than any sound. It was like watching a living dream unravel. The Lumen Sprite, now trembling visibly, hovered near the base of the falls, its light barely a flicker. It pointed a tiny glowing arm towards a dark opening nestled behind the tumultuous mist, the entrance to the echoing caves. The very air around the cave mouth felt cold, still, and heavy, like a shroud. The Whisperwind's presence here was faint, almost suffocated, as if struggling to breathe. Hesitantly, Elara approached the entrance, the chaotic whispers of the falls buffeting her. The Lumen Sprite nudged her hand, a desperate plea for her to continue. Drawing on her courage, she stepped through the veil of shifting mist and into the mouth of the echoing caves. Inside, the world changed completely. The air was frigid, damp, and utterly devoid of the forest's vibrant hum. The only sound was the distant, muffled roar of the Whispering Falls, now muted to a low rumble. Elara lit a small glowing moss lantern from her pack, its soft light pushing back the oppressive darkness. The cave walls were rough, uneven, but as she ventured deeper, her lantern light illuminated something extraordinary. Ancient carvings, intricate and delicate, covered the stone. They depicted the Whisperwind in its full glory, a swirling vortex of energy, tendrils reaching out to nourish a vibrant, thriving forest, creatures dancing in its light. But as she followed the carvings deeper into the cave, the depictions shifted. The Whisperwind became fragmented, its tendrils broken, its light dimming. The creatures in the carvings appeared distressed, fleeing, or standing still in sorrow. Further on, the carvings became almost abstract, broken lines and jagged angles, culminating in a single deeply carved symbol, a circle with a shard-like crack running through it, almost directly at its heart. A chill ran down Elara's spine, colder than the cave air. This wasn't just a recent ailment. This was a problem rooted in history, perhaps an ancient wound that had festered. She moved deeper, her boots squelching softly on the damp floor. The cave opened into a larger chamber, dominated by a towering, crystalline formation in the center. It should have been vibrant, humming with stored energy, radiating the Whisperwind's power. But this crystal was cracked, a jagged fissure running through its core, and instead of humming, it emitted a low, discordant thrum, a sound that grated against Elara's sensitive ears. Its facets, instead of sparkling, were dull and clouded. At its base, a pool of water, reflecting the cavern ceiling, should have been clear and pristine, shimmering with a faint, inner light. Instead, it was murky, stagnant, its surface barely rippling. As Elara peered into its depths, she saw not reflections, but faint, swirling shadows, not malevolent, but sorrowful, like trapped memories. Through the broken crystal, the stagnant pool, and the ancient carvings, Elara began to piece together a terrible truth. The Whisperwind was not merely sad or ailing, it was being drained. Its essence, its vibrant life force was being siphoned, perhaps from this very chamber. This place, once a nexus of its power, had become a wound, a point of weakness from which its vitality was slowly being bled. The trouble was not just an internal imbalance but an active affliction, like a slow poison. Suddenly, a deeper, more coherent whisper, faint but piercing, resonated directly in Elara's mind. It wasn't a general feeling now, it was a desperate plea, a fragmented thought that felt like a cry for help. Deep, beneath, the dreaming root, the silence grows. Elara's head snapped up. The dreaming root. An ancient, legendary tree, said to be the very anchor of the Whisperwood's magic, its roots stretching to the heart of the world. If the Whisperwind was being drained from Ahire, then the source of the draining, or the means to stop it, must lie even deeper, perhaps connected to that ancient root. The silence. That was the true enemy, the ultimate corruption. Her gaze fell upon the cracked crystal once more, then to the ancient symbols on the walls. The journey had just begun. She had found a critical nexus, a vital clue. The Whisperwind's heart was indeed troubled, and the path forward was now clearer, though infinitely more perilous. She had to find the dreaming root. She had to understand the silence. And she had to find a way to heal the Whisperwind before its song faded entirely. With a deep breath, Elara turned, her lantern casting long shadows, and began to search for a hidden passage, a way deeper into the earth, guided by the desperate fading plea of the Whisperwind. Elara's fingers, sensitive from years of tending to the forest's delicate balance, traced the cool, damp rock face. The Whisperwind's plea, though faint, tugged at her, not as a sound, but as an insistent pull in the very marrow of her bones, a yearning for release. It guided her past a tapestry of shimmering mosses, past a waterfall of petrified lichen, to a place where the rock seemed to ripple, almost like water, an illusion woven by ancient earth magic. Here, a massive gnarled root, thicker than any tree she had ever seen on the surface, spiraled downwards, its wood the color of twilight, barely discernible from the surrounding stone. It was a natural archway, yet clearly a passage, guarded by the deep earth itself. With a whisper of gratitude, Elara stepped through, her lantern's light swallowed almost instantly by the profound gloom within. The passage descended steeply, a winding tunnel of compacted earth and ancient interwoven roots. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp soil, and something else, a faint metallic tang, like distant thunder. The Whisperwind's song, which had been a fragile thread, now seemed to fray further, its echoes becoming distorted, as if struggling to penetrate the earth's dense embrace. Elara pressed on, her hand brushing against the rough, cool walls, listening to the rhythmic drip of unseen water, the only sound in the suffocating quiet. Hours blurred into a timeless descent. The tunnel occasionally widened into small grottos, where clusters of luminous fungi, like scattered pearls, cast a soft, ethereal glow, revealing veins of quartz that glittered in the rock. Here, the roots were not just structural but seemed to be alive with a slow, deliberate energy, pulsing faintly beneath her fingertips. She saw carvings too, faint and worn by ages, depicting ancient creatures of the deep earth, their forms fluid and serpentine, hinting at a hidden history beneath the forest floor. The passage eventually opened into a vast cavern, so immense that her lantern light was merely a defiant spark against its overwhelming darkness. Overhead, unseen, she sensed a ceiling that stretched impossibly high, a true cathedral of the underworld. But it was the silence that truly struck her here. It wasn't merely an absence of sound, but a way presence, a heavy, absorbing stillness that seemed to press in on her, muffling her own breath, dulling the faint hum of her lantern's magic. This, she realized with a chill, was a taste of the silence she sought to understand. Her eyes adjusted, guided by the faint luminescence of scattered crystals. The cavern floor was uneven, strewn with fallen rock and ancient petrified tree trunks, now resembling colossal bones. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the ground beneath her feet, a slow, rhythmic throb that seemed to come from the very heart of the earth. This was the pulse of the dreaming root, she knew, even before she saw it. Following the tremor, Elara navigated the treacherous terrain. She passed through groves of silent crystalline formations that resembled frozen tears, each one catching and refracting the scant light into 1,000 spectral rainbows. Here and there, she saw glimpses of life, tiny, blind cave newts, their skin translucent, scuttling away from her light, and delicate, almost invisible thread mosses that clung to the damp walls, surviving on the minerals and the faint, residual magic of the deep. But even these creatures moved with an unnatural quiet, as if afraid to break the profound stillness. The path grew narrower again, leading into a winding canyon carved by ancient underground rivers. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of pure, untainted water. Here, the silence was even more potent, a heavy blanket that seemed to absorb all energy, all sound, all hope. The Whisperwind's song was now almost entirely gone, a mere memory in the depths of Elara's mind, a quiet ache rather than a guiding force. She was truly alone now, relying on her own intuition and the persistent, almost imperceptible thrumming of the earth. She emerged into another chamber, smaller than the last, but infinitely more wondrous. This was no ordinary cavern. Its walls were not rock, but a living tapestry of interwoven roots, thick and ancient, pulsing with a soft inner light that shifted through hues of emerald, sapphire, and amethyst. At the very center of this root-bound chamber, rooted deep within the earth itself, was a colossal tree. Not a tree as she knew it, reaching for the sky, but a tree that burrowed eye downwards, its trunk a monstrous column of glowing, silvery wood, thicker than a dozen ancient oaks combined. Its roots, instead of spreading outwards, plunged deeper, disappearing into fissures in the floor that glowed with the same ethereal light. This was it. The dreaming root. The light it cast was warm, gentle, and utterly mesmerizing, yet around it, the silence was an almost physical entity. It pressed against the light, like an invisible hand trying to snuff out a flame. The root itself seemed to be struggling. Its radiant glow flickered, sometimes dimming to a faint pulse, then flaring again with a desperate strength. Small, dark tendrils like wisps of shadow clung to its glowing bark, slowly creeping upwards, absorbing its light, its life. These were the manifestations of the silence, she realized. Not just an absence, but an active, consuming force. Elara approached the magnificent root with reverence, her heart aching for its struggle. The dark tendrils seemed to recoil slightly from her lantern's light, but only for a moment, before resuming their insidious climb. She reached out, her hand trembling, and gently touched the silvery bark. It was warm, vibrant, humming with an ancient energy that resonated deep within her. But beneath that warmth, she felt the chill of the creeping shadows, the draining emptiness of the silence. As her fingers made contact, a surge of images, not thoughts but pure sensory impressions, flooded her mind. She saw the Whisperwind, not as a tree, but as a vast, interconnected network of roots and leaves, reaching across the entire forest, singing its joyous song. Then, a shudder, a ripple of unease, as if a great shadow had fallen over it. She saw the dreaming root, strong and vibrant, a heart pumping lifeblood through the earth, but now she saw it as if through clouded glass, its light dimming, its pulse faltering. The dark tendrils were not merely clinging, they were feeding. The silence, she understood now, was not just the absence of sound, but the absence of life song. It was a magical blight, a parasitic entity that consumed the very essence of magic, draining the vibrant energy from the dreaming root, which was the source of the Whisperwind's song and indeed the life force of the entire ancient forest. The Whisperwind was fading because its heart, the dreaming root, was being slowly devoured. But what was the silence? And how could it be fought? As these questions formed in her mind, another, more profound insight came to her. The dark tendrils pulsed with a faint, almost imperceptible rhythm, a countersong to the dreaming root's vibrant hum. It was a rhythm of quiet consumption, a slow, methodical draining. And within that rhythm, she sensed a pattern, a memory, not of the forest but of something ancient, something Yuviri. It felt like the whisper of a forgotten dream, a nightmare stirring in the deep earth. She withdrew her hand, the sudden loss of connection leaving her feeling cold and strangely bereft. The silence pressed in again, heavier than before, as if displeased by her intrusion, by her brief understanding. Elara looked around the glowing chamber, searching for answers, for a clue beyond the immediate struggle of the root. Her gaze fell upon a section of the root-bound wall that glowed with a slightly different hue, a deeper, almost indigo light. It was a small alcove, hidden by intertwining roots, and within it, resting on a pedestal of living stone, was a single ancient scroll. It was not made of parchment, but of tightly woven fibers from a plant she didn't recognize, its surface smooth and cool, covered in symbols that pulsed with the same indigo light. With careful hands, Elara lifted the scroll. It felt impossibly old, yet vibrant with contained energy. Unfurling it, she saw a map, not of the surface world, but of the deep earth, a sprawling network of tunnels and caverns, many of which she had traversed. Her finger traced her journey, finally resting on the depiction of the dreaming root. Beside it, a symbol she didn't recognize, a swirling vortex of shadow, clearly representing the silence. And then, further along the map, beyond the dreaming root, deep within a labyrinth of glowing crystals and subterranean rivers, was another symbol. It was a delicate, shimmering bloom, like a flower made of pure moonlight, surrounded by protective glyphs. Beneath it, written in the ancient script of the forest elves, a script she had studied for years, were words that made her heart quicken with a desperate hope. When the heart of earth fades, and silence consumes the psalm, seek the lumina bloom. Its light alone can dispel the deepest shadow, for it draws strength from the first star, untouched by earthly blight. The lumina bloom. Another quest, another mystery. The scroll implied it, held the key to combating the silence. It was not enough to simply understand the blight. She needed a weapon, a remedy. And the lumina bloom sounded like a potent one. Her gaze shifted back to the map. The path to the lumina bloom was arduous, winding through regions marked with symbols of deep magic and ancient guardians. One section, in particular, caught her eye. A vast subterranean lake, depicted with swirling currents and guarded by the stylized image of a colossal, multi-eyed creature. Beneath it, a warning: the lake of echoes, where the past whispers and the future is glimpsed. Beware the slumbering guardian, for its dreams are ancient and its wrath profound. Elara refilled the scroll carefully, her mind reeling with the new information. The problem was larger, more ancient, and more perilous than she had imagined. The silence was not a simple ailment, but a deep-seated corruption, and its antidote, the lumina bloom, lay far beyond her current reach, past a formidable guardian. She stood for a long moment, simply absorbing the warm, struggling light of the dreaming root, feeling the insistent cold pressure of the silence. The task ahead seemed monumental. Yet, a spark of resolve ignited within her. She had found the root, understood the nature of the silence, and now she had a clear direction. The Whisperwind song might be fading, but it was not yet extinguished. Hope, fragile but persistent, bloomed in the quiet of the chamber. Before leaving the heart of the dreaming root, Elara felt a deep need to attempt something, anything, to alleviate its immediate suffering. She knelt, placing her hands flat against the glowing bark once more. Closing her eyes, she focused, not on her own magic, but on the ancient healing energies of the forest that flowed through her. She poured her own life force, her connection to the surface world, into the root, a silent plea, a loving embrace. For a moment, the dark tendrils seemed to writhe, as if in pain, and the root's light flickered brighter, pushing back against the encroaching shadows. It was a fleeting victory, a temporary reprieve, but it was enough. Enough to know that the root was not beyond hope, that it could still respond to nurturing. It was a promise, a pact. With a final lingering touch, Elara turned from the struggling heart of the earth. She had to find the lumina bloom. The journey would be long and the dangers immense, but the fate of the Whisperwind, and perhaps the entire ancient forest, rested on her shoulders. Her lantern, which had seemed so small in the vast caverns, now felt like a beacon of purpose. She retraced her steps, the heavy silence still pressing in, but now armed with knowledge and a renewed determination. The trek back through the illuminated root chamber and the long, winding canyon felt different. She was no longer just a seeker, but a bearer of a sacred mission. The subtle hum of the earth, once a mere tremor, now felt like a pulse, a slow, patient beat, guiding her towards the next unknown. She reached the vast cavern again, the one where the silence had first truly made its presence felt. Here, the air was still thick with that oppressive stillness, but Elara noticed something new. As she moved, the crystalline formations around her seemed to respond, catching the faint ambient light and reflecting it in soft rhythmic pulses, almost like a silent language. She saw small shimmering motes of light, tiny luminescent spirits perhaps, flitting between the crystals, their presence barely perceptible. They were like the lost whispers of the Whisperwind, fragments of its song trapped in the deep earth, drawn to her quest. She reached an area where the cavern floor dipped into a shallow pool, its waters still and black, reflecting the distant unseen ceiling. As she approached, a ripple disturbed the surface. A creature emerged, not menacing but ancient and slow. It was a glimmer toad, its skin a mosaic of moss and glowing fungi, its eyes like twin pools of liquid starlight. These were the gentle keepers of forgotten knowledge, creatures rarely seen by surface dwellers, often found where magic pooled deepest. The glimmer toad regarded her with an ancient gaze, its head cocked slightly. It didn't speak, not with words, but with a series of soft resonant hums that vibrated through the rock and into Elara's bones. It was a question, an inquiry into her purpose. Elara, remembering the scroll, held it out, unfurled to the section depicting the lumina bloom and the lake of echoes. The Glimmertoad's starlight eyes focused on the map, and its hum deepened, becoming a low, knowing thrum. It then turned its head, pointing a webbed foot towards a section of the cavern wall that Elara had previously dismissed as solid rock. As it pointed, the rock shimmered. What had appeared to be a solid wall now revealed itself as a cunning illusion, a veil of earth magic. Behind it lay another passage, narrower and darker than any she had yet encountered, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through. This was not a natural passage, but one carved by magic, shrouded by it. The Glimmertoad had shown her a shortcut, perhaps even a protected route, known only to the deep dwellers. "Thank you," Elara whispered, bowing her head in gratitude. The Glimmertoad merely blinked its starlight eyes, then submerged itself back into the inky pool, leaving only ripples and the faint echo of its ancient hum. Taking a deep breath, Elara stepped towards the newly revealed passage. It felt colder than the previous tunnels, and the air within carried a faint, sweet, cloying scent, like ancient, decaying flowers. Her lantern's light seemed to struggle more here, casting wavering, uncertain shadows that danced like phantoms. This path was clearly leading her towards the Lake of Echoes, and towards its ancient, slumbering guardian. The walls of this new passage were smoother, almost polished, and occasionally adorned with intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to shift and reform in the corners of her vision. These were not carvings, but rather patterns woven into the very stone by magic, whispers of old enchantments. The ground beneath her feet was no longer rough earth, but a strange, resilient substance that muffled her footsteps entirely. The silence here was different too, less a crushing weight, and more an ethereal veil, a dreamlike quality that made her feel as if she were walking through liquid air. She walked for what felt like many hours, the passage slowly descending, until the sweet, cloying scent intensified, becoming almost overwhelming. Then she heard it, the faintest whisper, like wind sighing through distant trees, yet she was deep underground. It was not the Whisperwind song, but something else entirely, a chorus of hushed voices, barely audible, just at the edge of hearing. The echoes. The passage opened abruptly into another immense cavern, though this one was not dark. It was lit by a soft, diffused glow that emanated from the vast body of water that filled its entire expanse. The Lake of Echoes. Its surface was perfectly still, like a sheet of polished obsidian, reflecting the luminous ceiling high above, which was studded with countless glowing crystals, mirroring a starry night sky. The air here was filled with the whispers. They weren't distinct words, but a cacophony of murmurs, sighs, faint laughter, and distant cries, all woven into a tapestry of sound that was both haunting and mesmerizing. It was the sound of countless pasts, countless memories, held within the very fabric of the lake. In the center of this vast, still lake, a massive island rose from the water, its shores adorned with ancient, gnarled trees that dripped with bioluminescent moss. And on that island, dominating its highest point, was the Guardian. It was colossal, a mountainous mass of living stone and ancient bark, its form vaguely reptilian, but imbued with the stillness of a mountain. Its skin was mottled with moss and glowing fungi, and its body was scarred by the passage of millennia. Its eyes, however, were what truly held Elara's gaze. There were not 2 nor 4 but dozens of them, scattered across its craggy head and along its massive spine, each one a different size, and each one closed. It was indeed slumbering, as the scroll had warned. Its breathing was a slow, seismic rumble that vibrated through the entire cavern, stirring the whispers on the lake's surface into gentle ripples. The Lumina Bloom, according to the map, lay on the far side of this island, beyond the slumbering Guardian. There was no visible path across the lake. The water stretched out, impossibly wide and deep. Elara knew she couldn't simply walk around the Guardian. It was too vast, and the island too central. She had to cross the lake, and she had to do so without waking the ancient beast. She looked for a boat, a raft, anything, but there was nothing. The Lake of Echoes was pristine, untouched by any apparent human or elven intervention. As she pondered her predicament, the whispers on the lake intensified around her, seeming to swirl, almost as if trying to communicate. She focused, trying to discern meaning in the ethereal chorus. Slowly, fragments began to coalesce. Walk on memory, fear not, reflection. Walk on memory, fear not reflection. Elara looked at the perfectly still, mirrored surface of the lake. It reflected the glowing ceiling, the distant island, and her own image, clear and unwavering. Could it be that the lake itself was the path? Cautiously, Elara extended her foot towards the water's edge. The whispers seemed to hold their breath. Her foot hovered for a moment, then she placed it down. Instead of sinking, her boot met solid resistance. It was as if she were walking on air, or on an invisible pane of glass just above the water's surface. The whispers around her seemed to sigh, a collective exhalation, as if in approval. This was it. The Lake of Echoes was a pathway, but one that required a leap of faith, a trust in the unseen, a willingness to walk on the echoes of the past. As she took her first hesitant steps, the surface of the lake beneath her remained undisturbed, a perfect mirror reflecting the cavern above. Yet, just below her feet, in the depths of the water, she could perceive faint ghostly images swirling, faces, places, moments, all flickering and merging, the accumulated memories of the earth. The whispers intensified again, a swirling vortex of sound around her, but now they seemed less chaotic, more like a guiding chorus. Step lightly, do not disturb, the ancient dream. Elara understood. All. She had to be absolutely silent, absolutely weightless in her passage, lest she disturb the slumbering guardian. Every step was deliberate, gentle, her focus entirely on her balance and the silent communication of the lake. The soft glow from the ceiling above cast long ethereal shadows that danced around her, making the journey feel like a dream itself. As she drew closer to the island, the colossal guardian grew ever larger, its dormant form filling her vision. The dozens of closed eyes seemed to follow her, even in their slumber, and she felt a prickle of unease. Its massive head, adorned with antler-like growths of petrified wood, rested on a shelf of rock, its breath a slow, rhythmic exhalation of warm, damp air that smelled faintly of minerals and ancient earth. She reached the shore of the island, her invisible path dissolving behind her. The island itself was a tangle of ancient roots and moss-covered stones, and the sweet, cloying scent of decaying flowers was stronger here. Elara picked her way carefully through the undergrowth, keeping low, her eyes fixed on the distant side of the island where the map indicated the Lumina Bloom resided. The whispers of the lake followed her, fainter now, but still present, a constant reminder of the profound magic of this place. The colossal guardian remained asleep, its deep rumbling snores echoing across the lake. She moved past its immense, scaled body, feeling the sheer ancient power it radiated even in slumber. This was no mere beast, but an elemental force, a living mountain. Finally, she reached the far side of the island. Here, the landscape shifted dramatically. The ancient trees gave way to a clearing, and in the center of that clearing, shielded by a natural amphitheater of glowing crystalline rock, bloomed the Lumina Bloom. It was more exquisite than any flower she had ever imagined. Its petals, dozens of them, were like spun moonlight, shimmering with an inner luminescence that seemed to draw all other light into itself. It pulsed with a soft, gentle rhythm, mirroring the faint pulse she had felt in the dreaming root, but purer, stronger, utterly untainted. Its fragrance was intoxicating, a delicate ethereal sweetness that dispelled the cloying scent of decay and filled the air with a sense of profound peace. But the Lumina Bloom was not alone. Around its base, woven into the glowing rock, were intricate glyphs, shimmering with faint, protective energy. And standing guard, not a creature of tooth and claw, but a figure of ethereal light. It was tall and slender, its form composed of swirling motes of starlight, its eyes deep pools of cosmic dust. It was an astral watcher, a guardian of profound magic, its presence radiating an ancient, serene power. The astral watcher turned its head slowly, its starlight eyes fixing on Elara. It did not speak with a voice, but with a silent resonance that echoed directly in her mind, clear and unwavering. You seek the Lumina Bloom, child of the forest. You carry the burden of the Whisperwind's fading song, and the chill of the silence upon your spirit. But the bloom is not given lightly. Its power is immense, its purpose sacred. What offering do you bring to prove your worth, your understanding of the deep? Elara felt a wave of awe and trepidation. She had anticipated a physical challenge, a riddle perhaps, but not this direct spiritual test. What offering could she give to a being of pure starlight, a guardian of such profound magic. She had no gold, no precious gems, only her lantern, her staff, and the weight of her mission. She thought of the Whisperwind, of the struggling dreaming root, of the ancient forest above. She thought of her years of tending, of listening, of striving to understand the delicate interplay of life and magic. "I bring no gold, no earthly treasure," Elara responded, her voice soft but steady, resonating in the quiet chamber. "My offering is my spirit, my unwavering dedication to the balance of this world. I carry the memory of the Whisperwind's full song and the hope of its return. I offer my understanding of the forest's suffering and my vow to see it healed. I offer my own life, if that is what it takes, to restore the light to the dreaming root and silence the consuming shadow." The astral watcher tilted its head, its starlight form seeming to shimmer and swirl with greater intensity. Its gaze, though serene, probed deep into her soul, searching for truth, for intent. The air around them crackled with ancient magic, and the lumina bloom pulsed with a renewed, vibrant light. After what felt like an eternity, the watcher's silent voice resonated again, softer this time, tinged with an ancient wisdom. "Your spirit is pure, your intent true. You understand that balance is not merely absence of conflict, but the harmonious flow of life and death, light and shadow. The lumina bloom holds the essence of the first star, untouched by the cycles of the earth, a pure counterpoint to the deep, consuming shadow. It can mend the fraying threads of the dreaming root, but its power must be wielded with precision and great care." The watcher then raised a hand, composed of swirling starlight. The protective glyphs around the lumina bloom shimmered, then faded. The petals of the bloom slowly unfurled further, revealing a radiant, pulsating core of pure, concentrated moonlight. "Take one petal, child of the forest," the watcher instructed. "Only one. It holds enough power to begin the healing. The rest must remain here, to continue its vigil, to sustain the hope. Go now, and may the light of the first star guide your hand." With trembling hands, Elara reached out. Her fingers brushed against a single petal, cool and impossibly soft, like solidified moonlight. As she detached it, a wave of gentle energy flowed through her, invigorating her, clearing her mind. The petal pulsed in her palm, a miniature sun, emanating a soft, soothing warmth. It was more beautiful, more powerful than she could have ever imagined. She bowed deeply to the astral watcher, a profound sense of gratitude filling her. "I will not fail," she promised, her voice firm with newfound resolve. With the lumina bloom petal carefully secured in a small enchanted pouch she carried, Elara turned to begin the arduous journey back. The task was far from over. She now had a weapon against the silence, but the path to wielding it, to truly healing the dreaming root and restoring the Whisperwind's song, was still fraught with peril. She had to navigate the Lake of Echoes again, past the slumbering guardian, and make her way back through the deep earth. But now, she carried hope, a tangible piece of pure starlight, a promise of renewal. The journey had revealed not only the depth of the forest's suffering but also the profound ancient magic that still lay hidden beneath its surface, waiting to be rediscovered, waiting to be brought back into the light. The Whisperwind might be ailing, but its heart, the dreaming root, now had a chance. The song would rise again. The journey back was a different kind of challenge, yet infused with a lighter spirit. The tangible piece of starlight pulsed gently in Elara's grasp, a tiny sun that chased away the deepest shadows, illuminating the path she had so recently traversed in fear. The crystalline veins in the rock walls now shimmered with an answering light, as if waking from a long slumber. Each step she took felt less like an effort, and more like a gentle ascent, carried by an unseen current of hope. She passed the slumbering guardian once more. This time, the massive, ancient form did not seem quite so menacing. Its stone scales, usually dull and gray, caught the starlight and seemed to glow with faint emerald fire. As Elara drew near, a low rumble, like distant thunder, vibrated through the rock. The guardian's single, colossal eye, previously sealed shut, flickered open a slit, revealing an ancient, knowing gleam. It regarded Elara, then the starlight in her hand, and a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, heavy with ages of watchfulness, escaped its stony maw. It was a sigh of recognition, of approval, of a burden lightened. The guardian lowered its head once more, not in slumber but in a profound peace, sensing the shift in the deep earth. Elara continued, a newfound confidence in her stride. The whispers of the earth seemed less like warnings, and more like murmurs of anticipation. She felt the warmth of the starlight spread through her own dryad essence, invigorating her, making her feel more deeply connected to the very core of the world. She ascended through the root networks, the winding tunnels, and finally, after what felt like an age but was perhaps only a few hours, she saw it, a faint, greenish glow above, the soft, familiar light of the Whisperwind forest. Emerging from a hidden fissure beneath a gnarled ancient oak, Elara blinked, adjusting to the muted light of the surface world. The forest was still steeped in twilight, the trees hunched and silent, their leaves a muted, weary gray. Yet, as she stepped onto the forest floor, a tiny spark of light seemed to ripple outwards from her, touching the damp moss beneath her feet, making it glow faintly before fading. The forest was ailing, yes, but it was ready. She hurried towards the heart of the Whisperwind, the sacred glade where the dreaming root lay. Usually, this glade was a riot of color and sound, where lumiflora bloomed in bioluminescent bursts and the air hummed with the unseen energy of the forest's dreaming. Now it was desolate. The stream that once wound through it was a mere trickle, its stones coated in a slimy blackish film. The ancient trees that ringed the glade stood like skeletal sentinels, their branches bare, their leaves fallen or withered. And there, in the center, was the dreaming root. It was a sight that tore at Elara's heart. Once a vibrant tapestry of interwoven boughs, thick and gnarled, pulsing with a gentle inner light. It was now a mass of gray, brittle wood. Its surface was cracked and dry, and where its vital sap once flowed, there was only a dusty, dark residue. It barely seemed to breathe, a colossal, dying heart. Elara knelt before it, her heart heavy with sorrow, yet alight with fierce determination. She held the piece of starlight aloft. It pulsed in her palm, casting a tiny, brilliant circle of light on the withered root. She remembered the words of the ancient, the echoes of the song she had heard in the deep earth. From the sky, a seed of light, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, to the earth. A dream takes flight. Heart of green, where whispers sleep, wake anew from shadows deep. She carefully placed the starlight into one of the deepest cracks in the dreaming root. As it settled, a faint, resonant hum filled the air, a sound that seemed to come from the very core of the earth itself. The starlight didn't just sit there, it began to melt, to dissolve into a liquid, silvery luminescence that seeped into the dry wood. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the gray, brittle surface of the dreaming root began to change. Tiny veins of silver light spread outwards from where the starlight had dissolved, tracing intricate patterns across its gnarled surface. The cracks began to mend, knitting themselves together as if by an invisible hand. A faint, verdant glow emanated from within, pushing back the gray, chasing away the dust and decay. Elara closed her eyes, placing her hands gently on the awakening root. She felt its ancient heart begin to stir, a slow, deep pulse that resonated with her own dryad essence. She focused, drawing upon the deep earth magic she had encountered, upon the echoes of the ancient song, and began to sing. It wasn't the full, vibrant song of the forest yet, but a soft, hesitant melody, a lullaby of hope and healing, a promise of renewal. As her song mingled with the pulsing light of the root, the changes accelerated. The silvery veins on the root deepened, turning to a rich, emerald green. The dry wood softened, swelling with renewed life. Tiny buds, no bigger than a dewdrop, appeared on its surface, unfurling into miniature, translucent leaves that glowed with an inner fire. The air in the glade grew warmer, sweeter, carrying a faint scent of fresh earth and spring rain. From the dreaming root, tendrils of luminous green light began to spread, like roots themselves, burrowing into the forest floor. They pulsed with energy, reaching out, connecting to the network of roots beneath the earth. The faint trickle of the stream began to swell, its dark film dissolving into shimmering motes of light as pure, clear water began to flow once more. The lumiflora around the glade stirred, their dormant bulbs awakening, sending forth hesitant, glowing petals. The awakening was not contained to the glade. The light, the warmth, the song, Elara's song, now amplified by the burgeoning life of the dreaming root, spread outwards, rippling through the Whisperwind forest. Trees that had been silent and still for so long began to tremble. A collective sigh, soft as a summer breeze, swept through their branches as new life surged within them. From their bark, emerald mosses unfurled, brilliant and vibrant. Their withered leaves unfurled, stretching towards the faint light of the sky, regaining their deep, jewel-like green. Small forest creatures, birds and squirrels and shy deer, began to emerge from their hiding places, their eyes wide with wonder and a newfound hope. They tilted their heads, listening to the rising song, a melody woven from the rustling leaves, the bubbling stream, the humming air, and the deep, resonant pulse of the dreaming root. The other dryads of the Whisperwind, who had retreated into a deep, sorrowful slumber, began to stir. They felt the shift, the infusion of pure magic, the return of the lifeblood. One by one, their forms shimmered into existence near their chosen trees, their eyes still heavy with sleep, but slowly widening with awe as they witnessed the miracle unfolding. They saw Elara standing at the heart of the glade, bathed in the radiant glow of the reborn dreaming root, her voice now soaring, intertwined with the very essence of the forest. As the song swelled, a wave of pure, life-affirming energy washed over the entire Whisperwind. The shadow blight which had clung to the edges of the forest, manifesting as creeping darkness on bark and wilting despair in the air, could not withstand this onslaught of light and life. It shrieked, a sound unheard by mortal ears, but felt as a chill in the soul, and then it receded. Like wisps of smoke in a strong wind, the shadows curled inwards, shriveled, and dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind an air that was crisp and clean, vibrant with the scent of pine and damp earth. The Whisperwind forest was reborn. It was not merely restored to its former glory, it was renewed, infused with a deeper, more profound magic from the starlight and the awakened dreaming root. The trees stood taller, their leaves shimmered with an almost ethereal glow, and the very air thrummed with a joyful, ceaseless song. The ancient paths, once overgrown and dim, now beckoned with luminescent flowers. The stream sparkled, its waters tasting of pure starlight. Elara, exhausted but radiant, felt the full weight of the forest's love and gratitude wash over her. She was no longer just a young dryad, hesitant and fearful. She was the one who had listened to the whispers, who had dared to journey into the deep earth, who had brought the light back. She was a bridge between the ancient heart of the world and the vibrant life above, a keeper of the starlight's secret, a guardian of the rising song. Her connection to the forest was now absolute, an unbreakable bond that sang in her very being. In the days that followed, the Whisperwind forest thrived as never before. The dryads, invigorated by the renewed magic, danced among the trees, their laughter echoing through the vibrant glades. The forest creatures frolicked, their eyes bright with joy. Elara, though still humble, often returned to the dreaming root, now, a magnificent, pulsing heart of emerald and silver, its gentle hum a constant melody of peace. She would sit beside it, listening to its dreams, learning new songs from the wind and the leaves, ever watchful, ever connected. The memory of the shadow blight faded, replaced by the overwhelming beauty and vitality of the reborn forest. And as night fell over the Whisperwind, bathing it in the gentle glow of the moon and the countless stars, Elara would look up at the heavens, remembering the journey, the ancient, and the tangible peace of starlight that had brought renewal. The forest breathed, it dreamed, it sang. And in its heart, a young dryad, her spirit bright with courage and hope, knew that the magic of the world, though sometimes hidden, was always waiting to be rediscovered, always waiting to rise again. The song would never cease.